Helen Keller. What's the first thing that comes to mind? A young girl, deaf and blind, learning to communicate at a water pump. It's a powerful, inspiring story, one that has been told in classrooms and movies for generations. It's the story of a miracle, a triumph of the human spirit over unimaginable adversity. But what if I told you that this story, as moving as it is only the beginning? What if the most radical, most challenging, and perhaps most important parts of Helen Keller's life have been deliberately left out of the history books? Today, we're going to uncover the hidden history of Helen Keller. Not just the icon of perseverance, but the radical activist, the socialist, the fierce advocate for workers' rights, and a true revolutionary who fought for a better world for everyone. Get ready, because the Helen Keller you thought you knew is about to change forever. When Helen Keller was in her early 20s, she enrolled at Radcliffe College, a prestigious institution. It was here, amidst her studies, that her worldview began to expand dramatically. She wasn't just reading literature and history. She was devouring books on economics, philosophy, and political theory. And what she discovered shocked her to her core. Through her fingertips, reading Braille, she learned about the brutal realities of industrial America. She read about child labor, with kids her own age and younger working in dangerous factories and mines for pennies a day. She learned about the horrific working conditions, the long hours, the low wages, and the constant threat of injury or death that factory workers faced. She realized that her own struggles with disability were not an isolated misfortune. Instead, she saw a connection between her own experience of being marginalized and the systemic oppression faced by the working class. She began to see that poverty and disability were often intertwined, both products of a society that valued profit over people. This wasn't just an academic exercise for her. It was a profound awakening. The world was not a fair or just place, and she felt a burning desire to do something about it. It was during this time that she discovered the works of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and other socialist thinkers. Their ideas resonated with her deeply. Socialism offered a framework for understanding the injustices she was witnessing. It explained that the poverty and exploitation of the many were a direct result of the wealth and power accumulated by a few. It wasn't about individual failings. It was about a system designed to benefit the owners of capital at the expense of the laborers. For Helen, this was a revelation. It gave a name to the injustice she felt and provided a path forward. In 1909, she officially joined the Socialist Party of America. This was not a casual decision. It was a bold and public declaration of her beliefs. And she didn't just join. She became one of its most vocal and passionate advocates. She wasn't content to be a silent member. She began writing essays and giving speeches, using her growing fame not just to inspire, but to challenge the status quo. She saw the fight for workers' rights as inseparable from the fight for the rights of women, people of color, and people with disabilities. It was all one struggle for a more just and equitable world. Imagine the scene. Helen Keller, a figure already world famous for overcoming her disabilities, stands before a crowd, but she's not there to talk about the water pump. She's there to talk about revolution. She traveled the country, speaking out in support of striking workers. She supported the industrial workers of the world, or the IWW, known as the Wobblies, one of the most radical labor unions in American history. They advocated for one big union to unite all workers, regardless of their trade or skill level, to challenge the power of the capitalist class. Helen defended their militant tactics and their vision of a worker-run society. She wrote passionately about the Ludlow massacre in Colorado, where striking coal miners and their families were attacked and killed by the National Guard. She condemned the system that allowed such violence to happen. She wasn't just a sympathizer. She was a fighter. She used her pen as her weapon, writing fiery articles for socialist newspapers and magazines. She called out newspaper editors and politicians who she felt were mouthpieces for the rich and powerful. She argued that the mainstream press, which had once celebrated her as a miracle, was now trying to silence her because her political views were too dangerous. Of course, the establishment was not happy. The same newspapers that had praised her as an angel and a symbol of human potential now turned on her. They were bewildered. How could this gentle, inspiring woman hold such radical, un-American views? Their explanation was as condescending as it was revealing. They claimed she couldn't possibly have come to these conclusions on her own. They argued that her disabilities meant she had a limited understanding of the world. They suggested she was being manipulated by her socialist comrades, unable to form her own complex political thoughts. It was a classic case of ableism, using her disability to discredit her intellect and her politics. But Helen Keller was having none of it. She fired back with blistering wit and intelligence. In a famous letter, she wrote, "At other times, the same papers were willing to publish my writing as long as I dealt with issues they approved of. But when I write about poverty and the economic system, they remind the public that I am blind and deaf, and therefore not qualified to form an opinion." She exposed their hypocrisy with breathtaking clarity. She made it clear that she saw the world, not in spite of her disabilities, but because of them. Her experience of being marginalized gave her a unique and powerful perspective on the injustices of the world, a perspective that her critics could never understand. Helen Keller's radicalism didn't stop with workers' rights. She was a committed pacifist, vehemently opposing World War I, while many prominent figures were swept up in a wave of patriotic fervor. Helen saw the war for what it was, a conflict where poor working-class men from different countries were sent to kill each other for the profits of their ruling classes. She famously said, "The worker has no country." She urged workers not to fight, to see their common enemy not across the battlefield, but in the boardrooms and halls of power back home. She was also a passionate advocate for women's suffrage, seeing the fight for the vote as a crucial step towards empowering women to fight for their own economic and social liberation. And she was a pioneering supporter of birth control, at a time when even speaking about it was taboo. She understood that reproductive freedom was essential for women as autonomy and for poor families to escape the cycle of poverty. She was a co-founder of the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, dedicated to defending the constitutional rights of all Americans, especially the most vulnerable and unpopular. Her vision was intersectional long before that term was common. She understood that all forms of oppression, classism, sexism, ableism, and racism were interconnected and had to be fought together. So, why don't we learn about this Helen Keller in school? Why is her story so often sanitized, reduced to a simple, feel-good tale? The answer is uncomfortable. The Helen Keller, who is a symbol of personal triumph, is safe. She is inspiring, but she doesn't challenge our fundamental assumptions about society. She fits neatly into a narrative about overcoming individual obstacles through sheer willpower. But the radical Helen Keller, the socialist, the anti-war activist, the champion of the working class, that Helen Keller is dangerous. She challenges the very foundations of our economic and political system. She forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about inequality, exploitation, and power. Her story suggests that personal perseverance isn't enough. It suggests that the systems themselves are broken and need to be fundamentally changed. And that is a much more radical and much more threatening message. By erasing her political life, we are being deprived of the full measure of her greatness. We are given a one-dimensional hero when the reality was a complex, brilliant, and courageous revolutionary. The life of Helen Keller is a powerful lesson in how history is written, and more importantly, how it is rewritten. By focusing only on her early life, we miss the essence of who she became. A woman who used her incredible intellect and platform to fight for the most marginalized people in society. She wasn't just a symbol. She was a soldier in the class war. She teaches us that true courage isn't just about overcoming personal adversity. It's about seeing the suffering of others and dedicating your life to ending it. It's about speaking truth to power, even when it's unpopular, even when they try to silence you. The real miracle of Helen Keller isn't that she learned to speak. It's what she chose to say. She gave a voice to the voiceless and fought for a world where everyone, not just the privileged few, could live with dignity and freedom. So next time you hear the name Helen Keller, remember the whole story. Remember the radical, the socialist, the revolutionary. Remember the woman who saw the world more clearly than most people with perfect sight. Thank you so much for watching. If this story changed your perspective on Helen Keller, let us know in the comments below. What other hidden histories would you like to see us cover? Do you want to forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge the official narrative? Your support helps us continue to bring these important histories to light. See you in the next video.